Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently? Had their fortunes gone differently? Had certain wrestlers not left and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Ganyas? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987 along with Greg Gagne, Baron Von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the AWA.
Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. We are on here today because of you, viewers and watchers like you. In order to continue the podcast, we need to monetize our YouTube channel so we can get guests on that require financial compensation. That's where viewers like you come in. If you subscribe today, we can get that number up to 1,000. And as an incentive, the 1,000th subscriber will receive a free t-shirt just like this and receive a book from the legendary George Shire on his Minnesota Golden Age of Wrestling, from Vern Gagne to the Road Warriors, signed by George Shire himself. So please get on there, tell your friends to subscribe today, and when you hit that 1,000 mark, you're going to get a t-shirt like this. I'm going to reach out to you. You're going to be coming on the show as a guest and receive that book, the Minnesota's Golden Age of Wrestling, from Vern Gagne to the Road Warriors, signed by George Shire. So get on there today, subscribe, and please enjoy the podcast. Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today is known as the Golden Boy. He was half of the tag team known as Midnight Gold with beautiful Bobby Eaton, and was member of the faction known as the Empire in TCW, Traditional Championship Wrestling, with Matt Rivera, Tim Storm, Shane Williams, and Steve Anthony. He is also a three-time NWA National Champion and a multi-time tag team champion. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. Greg, thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. Heard a lot about you, looked up some things on you, and you know, you've done very well for yourself from what I've read and seen. And you know, I used to watch Traditional Championship Wrestling some years back, and that name clicked, and I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. And I started watching again on YouTube, and there you were. So
right.
That's good stuff. So, okay. So Greg, let's talk a little bit about, if we could, growing up, where you're from, kind of your family, getting in, and then kind of schooling, if you have any, after high school, and getting into the business. We could.
Sure. So I was actually born in Southern Illinois, a little town called Centralia, Illinois. And we lived in a smaller town called Salem till I was about 5 or 6 years old. And then my family was moved with World Color Press, which was a printing operation. A major printing operation, used to do magazines. I know that sounds far-fetched to some of the kids out there, but actual physical magazines. So we got transferred to here in West Tennessee, and I've been here in West Tennessee, like I said, since I was 6 years old.
Okay.
I was always a fan. Like in Southern Illinois, we got WWF, obviously, and we got World Class, and we got Crockett. Then when I came to West Tennessee, I'm flipping through the channels one Saturday morning, and I see Memphis Wrestling. And this is my first experience with Memphis Wrestling. And the first two people I see, of course, are Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. So I'm like, oh, what's this? You know what I mean? So that immediately sparked my interest. And it's just one of those things. My grandmother, me and my grandmother are actually the only wrestling fans in my family. She's been a wrestling fan since she was for 77 years or something like that. She actually she actually gave me a book not long ago, which is a little black book that she had when she was a kid, and she was writing down results of matches that she would see. You know what I mean?
Okay.
She used to,
Yeah.
she used to go to Kiel Auditorium and things like that when she was a kid. She used to see, Dick the Bruiser, and then Harley versus Johnny Valentine and things of that nature. I mean, it was just it's amazing the amount of wrestling that she's got to witness. I've got a
Yeah.
program for where she went to a random show in the '80s at some high school there in Illinois, and it was Bruiser Brody versus Ric Flair. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, just on some random spot show in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. So, from there, it's weird how God works in mysterious ways, because
Mhm.
in Illinois, there's wrestling, obviously, and there's some independent promotions, but it's nowhere near as prevalent there as it is here in West Tennessee. I cannot
Yeah.
throw a rock in West Tennessee without hitting a weekly wrestling promotion,
Yeah.
right? So if you're going to get in the business, this is the place to try. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity. Even if some of the stuff isn't up to par, at least you get your foot in the door and you start working. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so when I was growing up, huge wrestling fan. I played basketball all through high school, and I thought maybe I was going to play at the next level, or maybe start coaching, or something. Something to do with basketball was what I wanted to do. But I just always had this wrestling thing on my mind that I wanted to do it. And at the time when we graduated, Memphis Championship Wrestling, which was the developmental territory,
Mhm.
was coming to our hometown, New Bern, Tennessee, once a month. And this is when they had William Regal, they had R-Truth, they had Daniel Bryan when he was still the American Dragon under the hood. They had the Haas brothers. They just had all these guys. And like I said, they were coming to our hometown once a month, but they were only drawing like 30 people, which was
Yeah.
ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my buddy, whose dad was a police officer in the hometown, goes up to Terry Golden, who runs the promotion, and says, "Hey, listen, my son and his friends are trying to get in professional wrestling. Can you help them?" Right? So he says, "Well, let's see what they can do." They bring us out to a workout basically, and he liked what he saw. Of course, we didn't
Mhm.
know anything really.
Right.
We knew what the moves were supposed to look like, but we had no idea how to piece anything together or anything like that. But he saw the potential in us, and he said, "Okay, next month when we come back, I'm going to put you guys in an intermission match." I was like, "Okay." So we went around for the next month telling everybody in town that we were professional wrestlers and we were going to be in this intermission match and we were going to do this, this, and this, right?
Yeah.
Well, that next show had over 200 people at it. And,
Okay.
and an intermission match wasn't intermission. It was intermission, but it was semi-main event,
Okay.
right? And we went out there, we did the best we could. Like I said, everything we did looked fine, but there was no psychology. We didn't know anything about psychology at that point. So
Yeah.
like they just kind of let us do whatever. Terry didn't even let us be in the same locker room with the rest of the wrestlers. We had our own separate thing away from everyone else. The only guy that actually
Yeah.
come over and say hi to us was Reckless Youth, who I've always been a huge fan of Reckless Youth, and this just cemented it for me. He came over and said, "Hey guys, just keep your heads up. Glad you guys are trying to get in the business. Keep working hard, do all this." So,
Mhm.
and then after the matches, William Regal actually came up to us, came up to me, and was giving me advice on certain things. It was just a surreal kind of thing. We did that for a couple months, and then they lost their developmental deal and shut down, and we caught on with a local promotion, and that's when we started training and working every week and things like that.
Okay. Let's talk about your training. Who were you trained by? Kind of give us that process of how that kind of developed.
Well, like I said, the first time I ever took a bump in a wrestling ring, you know, I I ended up having a match that night. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Which is
Yeah.
not the way at all that this is supposed to happen. But
Yeah. Right.
unfortunately, this is how it happened for me. I'm along the same lines of the Hardys and things of that nature. We had our own backyard thing that we were trying to do, and we were doing the stuff with the Memphis Championship Wrestling, and it just all kind of fell together. Like I said, when
Yeah.
we actually started working for the local promotion, then we started getting trained. There was a guy named Rude from Naughty by Nature that really helped break us in and start teaching us some things. Guy named Motley Cruz here locally, who you know, he was trained by Dick Steinberg, if you
Okay.
remember
Yeah.
that name. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was trained by him many, many years ago, and he he wrestled in the territory days, but just as an underneath guy, you know, wrestled Flair and things like that. But yeah, just one thing after another. Then I did a camp with Dr. Tom. Then we got, you know, when we were around Sir Mo some, and just everything just started kind of falling into place. And I just became extremely thirsty for knowledge. Cause like
Yeah.
I told people this before, when I got into wrestling, I was such a huge wrestling fan. I thought I knew, right?
Yeah.
I thought I knew. I thought I had it all figured out. And I was quickly, you know, told and quickly shown I know absolutely nothing. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everything I started to learn, then I started to look back at all those matches that I loved, you know what I mean? And like, okay, now I understand that. Now, okay, that's why they did that, you know. I start piecing things together. So it was really a very exciting time for me.
Yeah. Sounds like it. So once you kind of get going and you're kind of trained up, talk about some of your interactions in the ring with maybe somebody that you really gelled with well, either as a competitor on the other side or maybe as a tag team. Maybe you guys just gelled. Is there anybody that you just had that it factor with, that chemistry?
Yeah, there's several people. Like a group of us that started together. There was a bunch of young guys between the ages of 15 and 19. We all got started about the same time, and we were all really pretty much in sync on a lot of stuff because we were young. You know, we were hungry. We wanted to do all this
Yeah.
stuff. You know, we weren't afraid to try anything. You know, in a lot of cases, even though I was probably the most, you know, I wouldn't say seasoned, but I was the one wanting to do drop toe holds while they were wanting to do shooting star presses. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So,
No, I
but there was
understand.
one guy in particular. His name was Stan Lee, and he was phenomenal. He was basically, and we were just talking about this the other day. He was basically Pac before there was a Pac.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
He had a really good build on him. He was immensely athletic. He could do just about anything. You know what I mean? Like, and he just had that natural body movement. He was almost, in some ways too, he was like a Ricky Steamboat because he was so natural at selling and getting things over that it was amazing that he wasn't on the bigger stage. You know what I mean? Because he
Yeah.
was that good.
Yeah. Wow. Let's speak of the bigger stages. Let's talk about that. Have you ever been a part of, either as a fill-in or whatever, WWE or AEW or Impact or anybody like that? You were NWA national champion. I know that 3 times. But I mean, you know, were you ever part of that in any capacity? I mean, there's some guys that do, sometimes they call them up, hey, we need you up here for tonight in case
Right.
of whatever. Did you ever have any of that?
The only thing we did is, like I said, when we did that camp with Dr. Tom, you
Okay.
know, he was still head of talent relations for WWE at the time.
Okay.
And I got his number and I stayed in contact with him. And I sent him tapes of my wrestling and stuff like that. And he really, really liked me. He really liked my work. But the phrase in professional wrestling, especially on that level, the phrase was always get bigger, which was code for, hey, get on steroids.
Yeah.
So when you're 170 pounds, I was 170, 180 pounds at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear that. And of course I can do that all day long, but until I, you know, went to that level, then it's kind of a moot point. Like I would only get up to maybe 200, you know, and then it would just be starting all over again. But like I said in the beginning, God works in mysterious ways. I end up having
Yeah.
a genetic heart condition that
Oh,
none of us
no.
knew about. That
Yeah.
if I would have done steroids like a lot of wrestlers were, like a lot of my friends were, like a lot of people in this area, then I probably would have died because
Yeah.
what the cardiologist ended up telling me, this happened in 2017, so I'm 35 years old, and they find that I don't have any right arteries, I just have left.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I had a 90% blockage in my widowmaker and 270% blockages elsewhere.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, and I was wrestling 30, 40 minutes a night, you know, and I started having chest pains. That's where we kind of started looking into everything. And eventually I
Yeah.
got this scan, and the scan told me everything. Told me I had basically had half a heart, basically, is what it is. And like I said, my arteries wrap all the way around my heart, so it takes longer for the blood to get to the right side of my heart than it would someone else. So, but anyway, they told me if I wouldn't have played basketball all through school and I wouldn't have started professional wrestling when I was 18 years old, that what I had probably would have killed me in my 20s. And but then you combine that with the factor if I did start doing steroids and abusing steroids as was known at the time, then it would have compounded that, exponentially, So God works in mysterious ways. It's one of those things. Like I'm glad that I was so hard headed and stubborn because I've always been like that. Someone said you can't do something or whatever. I was like, yes, I can. Like, well, you can't be a great wrestler if you're not, if you don't look like that. And I was like, I disagree. So I and it ended up working out better for me anyway, because the shows that I was on, guys were in shape. You know what I mean? There was always guys that looked phenomenal. And then I would come out looking like, Eric Embry, and like everybody would go, well, who the hell's this guy? And then I start talking and I start wrestling. They go, okay, he can go. You know what I mean? It was almost like this. It was almost like Susan Boyle. Remember when Susan Boyle came on the America's Got Talent? Everyone looked at her like, there's no way this girl can sing. And then she gets out there and is the best singer, of the season. Same thing. I would walk out and I could hear people going, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Well, he's a wrestler? No way. And then like all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, he's good.
Yeah. You don't always judge a book by its cover, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder what would happen if
you give a dad a podcast?
I'm what you call a nerdy fan. I nerd out at this stuff hardcore.
You'll hear me talk about anime on here. You'll hear me talk about Power Rangers. You'll hear me talk about wrestling on here.
Okay.
I had a axe handle with a Twisted Tea on it. It was right after that Twisted Tea video went viral. And man, they went out and grabbed it and smacked a dude in the head with it. It was so...
That's great. I'd like to think of this podcast as a nostalgia moment for me. It's a show where I can talk about whatever I want.
I'm a human animal chiropractor. There was a picture of me. It looked like I was on the side of a ramen box over in China. But
So I took my kids with me to Comic-Con.
I thought that was really cool.
I don't know if my wife should listen to this podcast. We'll cut that part out.
You hope. Be like, and then Robert said this.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast. Available now on all podcasting platforms.
Let's talk a little bit. I'm glad you're okay. Thank goodness. I did not know any of that, so that our fans are getting some little inside information on you. That's. I'm glad you're good though. I'm glad that they caught that, and it's hard. You talk about steroids and things like that. It's that business is rough because you're traveling a lot. There's a lot of wrestlers that do alternate means to stay in shape, to stay, not falling asleep, getting tired or getting weaker. I'm glad you didn't do that, and that it all worked out for you. Like you said, God works in mysterious ways, and
I understand the aesthetic appeal to looking like that. I really do. But I've always been an advocate for professional wrestling. Didn't 100% need that. We just needed guys that look like men and look like they could fight. And like I hear people all the time like, oh, they weren't in shape back in the 50s. They were all garbage. And I go look at some of these guys and they're in phenomenal shape. You know what I mean? A guy like Lou Thez was 6'3", 6'4", 225 pounds, something like that. And he was slick as a panther. You know what I mean? Like he was still very agile and could move around. And then you got guys like Dick the Bruiser and Bill Watts and, just guys that were just powerhouses, you know what I mean? Like power lifters kind of thing. It's like there's so much of those guys that don't get enough credit for the kinds of bodies that they had because they were believable.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there. You hit the nail on the head. The believability someone, I probably see the background there, like Hogan and these guys, Ventura. Yeah, they're great bodies. And I'm not saying they're obviously they're legends. I mean, but
Yeah.
guys in that era that you're talking about, I grew up, in the 70s, 80s. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. But a lot of guys didn't have that $1 million body, but they could work you. I mean, you got the Vern Gagnes and Nick Bockwinkel's. Those guys weren't powerhouse dudes, but guess what? They could last an hour in the ring and take you to the task. And like yourself. So I applaud you for not giving in to the pressure, I guess.
The pressure, the peer pressure of
the peer pressure. All right,
professional wrestling. But
yes, yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of it, to move up. Yeah, Greg, I want to talk about your time in TCW. That's where you probably, from what I've seen, now I might be wrong. That's where you kind of like catapulted, I guess, to the next level, if you will. A lot of TV exposure, the fashion you were in, the matches you had. What was that like working in TCW?
Well, first let me say that what really started me on the path to TCW was tagging with Bobby Eaton. Because I've been down here in West Tennessee and I've been doing well, and everyone knew I could work and everyone knew I was good and stuff like that. And I was just polishing myself out. And when the Bobby Eaton opportunity came along, that was the first time that people outside this area go, "Who's Greg Anthony? Who's this Greg Anthony kid that's tagging with Bobby Eaton?" And that really put me on the map. The great thing about that was the entire time we tagged for 2 years, the entire time that Bobby Eaton and I tagged, I never took a pin. He would not allow me to be beat.
Wow.
He took every pin that Midnight Gold ever took. And then some promoters would go, "Okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to pin Greg or beat Greg." And Bobby would chime in. He'd go, "No, we're not beating Greg. We're beating me."
Wow.
And then, and when you look at it, there's not very many guys of his level that would do that. You know what I mean?
Over. Yeah.
And just to that extent, and he always said, I'm made, no one's gonna hurt the name Bobby Eaton anymore. You know what I mean? So I mean, it does me absolutely. It does me no. They can beat me all day long, and I'm still gonna be Bobby Eaton. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
so when we started, Matt Riviera was running TCW, and we had pitched. He wanted the Midnight Express to come in. He wanted Bobby and Dennis, or maybe Bobby and Stan, to come in and work. But of course, Dennis and Stan weren't really doing much then. Right. So they were like, So they kind of balked at me and him coming in. Then, and this is all the younger wrestlers out there, so they know you never know where opportunity is going to come. I went to some bullshit show in the middle of Arkansas that literally had 12 people at it. The promoter comes to the back and says, "Hey guys, there's only 12 people out there. We're still going to have the show. You don't have to wrestle if you don't want to. You can go home, but I can't pay you." Blah blah. We gave the whole spiel, right?
Yeah.
I said, "I'm already here. I want to wrestle anyway, so I'll wrestle." Right?
Yeah.
So I go out there. Matt Riviera is on this show, right? I go out there with a kid I've never met. It was a trainee. He'd had like 3 matches. I go out there, tear the house down with this kid. I get the back, and Riviera goes, "Man, that was really good. How long you been training the kid?" And I said, "I just met him a couple hours ago. He's not my kid. He's so-and-so's kid." And he goes, "You just had that match with a trainee that wasn't yours, that's only had like 3 or 4 matches?" And I said, "Yes." And he kind of nodded his head like, "Okay." And then after that, he booked me on everything TCW. Anything Matt Riviera ever did, I was booked on.
Yeah. That's amazing. Let's talk about Matt Riviera. I haven't seen him in a while, a few years now. It seemed like they were on a good run, and it kind of, I've talked to Brian Thompson a little bit about stuff like this, but I want to get your perspective on it. It was going well, and then it just kind of, I don't know what happened. It just, can you help me out with that? Because it was going good.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we felt like we were doing everything right. We had better production than Ring of Honor, we believed. and we were producing a more realistic Southern product than Ring of Honor was, right? So why weren't we that number 3 spot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it is, and people don't talk about this a lot, but there is a legitimate Southern bias in the world of wrestling journalism. You know, if you're not above the Mason-Dixon line, then you get overlooked for a lot of things. And that was the thing. We were a Southern-based product. You know, we didn't run anything. Everything was Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri, you know, all in that area. And we just didn't get, if the wrestling community would have treated us like they treated Ring of Honor, like this upswell of support like it was, you know what I mean, and talk about it every time there's an article coming up, then we'd still be around today. But it just became one of those things, like he was working so hard and he was putting so much money into this thing, and it wasn't paying off like it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that program was great. It wasn't over, it wasn't all this eye candy popping, fireworks, boom, boom, 10 minutes on the mic. It was, you talked for about 2 minutes, you went to the ring, did your job, you maybe come back for another minute and spoke and said how I kicked everybody's hind end, and you went back to the back, like traditional championship wrestling. And you had stars there. You had a great Ken Resnick was, your announcer there, or your commentator. And I was just so surprised at when it went off the air. And there's another one, I don't know if you ever heard of it, National Wrestling League, that was in Kansas City for a few years. They were hot. And then all of a sudden, boom, gone. And it just really, I mean, I know indies are starting to come back now. They're thriving again. And I think people are starting to realize, and I don't know, maybe you have more insight on this than me because you do this for a living. I think people now are starting to really come back to that old school mentality of, we want to watch wrestling. Yes, we'll listen to your comments for 2 minutes or whatever. You get your interview and talk, and then you go to the ring and do your job, maybe come back, say a few words and leave. Not this 20-minute exposure of you in the ring that nobody cares about. Is that where you think the business is going back to? I mean, on your side of the fence?
Well, first of all, let me say that the reason the traditional championship wrestling worked so well was because Matt was a huge fan of Mid-South wrestling, Bill Watts' Mid-South. Yeah. And that was really the blueprint for what he was doing. And we were basically running the same territory. So, it all just kind of came together. And like I said, we had Ken Resnick, we had Lance Hoyt was our champion for a while. Dreamer was there a lot. We just had a really good group of guys. And you had guys like me and Sigmund and Jason Kincaid and just this host, Barrett Brown, just this host of talent that was there. You look at that roster now, you'd like, what the hell? That's an amazing roster. As far as like wrestling today goes, by no measurable metric can you say that professional wrestling is better now than it was 30, 40 years ago. And unfortunately, yes, the independents have come up a little bit because, like you said, there's a lack of what people are wanting to see on the national level, but they're still not to where they should be. You know what I mean? People, I'll say professional wrestling is it's more accessible now than it's ever been in wrestling history, but less people are watching it in wrestling history. And people will go, well, WrestleMania did 100,000 people. I was like, okay, that's one company, 1 night or 2 nights that did 100,000 people, right? Yeah. But like we used to have 30 territories that drew thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis. You can't measure that in the same way. And where WWE employs X amount of people, every territory had a full roster and a full staff of people and people in the office. It was just a much, much bigger thing. I'm a huge fan of the territory system itself because I really feel that is the best way to present professional wrestling.
Hello, everyone. This is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Fouls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, and as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks. And I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. They drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast. And I think, too, it's the best way to develop wrestlers. It's kind of like the farm system in baseball, right?
Yeah.
You start in a territory, you know, when you start out, you get trained, you start in a territory, and you work your way up. And again, like you said, if you get hot a little bit and you kind of maybe your character or whatever is kind of going, it's kind of fading out a little bit. Okay, well, I can go to Mid-South, you mentioned earlier. I'm going from Minneapolis to Mid-South, the South down there. I'll go down there for a year, rebuild my brand, and get hot again, and then go somewhere. You could do that. Now, I mean, it's, on TV, per se, don't get me wrong here. It's WWE or AEW. And you get lost in the shuffle because they're so big that there's only so much room for so many people.
Yeah.
Where in the territories, there's 30. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say you made a good point with the baseball thing, because even at a certain time period in the business, when TNA kind of filtered out, but the WWE was still the only game in town, kind of thing. And there was this thing where, like, this as well as I do, if there's a kid in baseball, a high school kid that can throw 100 miles an hour, everybody in the major leagues knows where that kid is, right? Everybody knew where he was, knew what he was doing, where he was going to go to college. Was he going to skip to the majors? Whatever the deal was, right?
Yeah.
Well, professional wrestling wasn't like that. It became a casting call. It became, we're not going to pick the most talented guys on the independent scene. It became, we're looking for someone 6'3" with blonde hair, abs, and looks good in trunks. You know what I mean? And that's who they would basically, it became like, Hollywood, Yeah. And I had a problem with that too, because at the end of the day, I truly believe that wrestling talent is the number one thing. If you've got wrestling talent, no matter what that may be, maybe you're a great talker, maybe you're great in ring, whatever the talent may be, that should be the underlying factor, whatever. Obviously there's going to be exceptions for guys that are 7'5" and stuff like that, where you can, create an Andre type aura kind of thing. But I mean, for the most part, it should be about wrestling talent.
100% agree. I mean, even if you're great in the ring and can't talk, you can get a manager that can talk for you. There's been that for years. You don't even see that anymore. You don't even see managers. They just, and that's what's irritating.
Yeah,
that's very frustrating.
That's what's bothered me too. Like, I get guys all the time that'll be like, well, hey, why don't you let me cut promos? I was like, because you can't cut a promo. If you could cut a promo, I would let you cut promos. But since you can't, I'm not going to put you out there and have you do something that you're not good at. You understand? If you want to cut promos, then practice them, work on them, and prove to me that you can. That used to be the thing for centuries, for decades in the business was, okay, he's a great worker, but he's not really that charismatic and can't talk. Okay, put him with Sir Oliver Humperdinck, and he'll fill his role. You know what I mean? Nowadays, like I said, back to the Hollywood thing. We're just going to I don't care if you can talk or deliver this at all. We're going to give you a script and you're going to read it. I want to kick your butt on Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. It's like, it's so bad.
Yeah. You're nailing it on the head, my friend. I mean, I try to watch it, I don't watch it as much as I probably should for what I do with these podcasts, because it's not believable like it used to be. As believable, I should say.
No,
when I grew up.
Go ahead,
Greg.
I said, well, they don't even try. You know what I mean? Like last night we were watching NXT and they basically did like a Sopranos scene. You know what I mean? And like these two guys are like, the camera's 3 feet away from them but they're having this private conversation about the family and like what's going to happen, and is he going to kill me and throw me off this bridge? It's like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like, everything else on television is television. Why can't wrestling be wrestling? You understand?
Yeah.
I want to see wrestling on television. I don't want to see a television show about wrestling.
Right.
And that's what I feel like it's been for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I comply with you on that. It's challenging to watch. I try to a little bit. I probably get about 20, 30 minutes. And then I got to switch to television. Then I usually go to YouTube, or I got some DVDs that I watched from back in the 70s, 80s. And I understand. So, and you're about 10 years younger than I am. So, yeah, I totally understand. So, but okay. So let's talk about what you're doing now. You're in running a promotion. Yep. There it is. Mid-South Pro Wrestling.
Pro Wrestling
Let's
Mid-South.
talk about, I'm sorry, Pro Wrestling Mid-South. Excuse me.
It's okay.
I want to say the word correctly. Yes. The company. Talk to us about that. What's going on with you guys? What are you guys up to?
Like I said, this area has always had weekly wrestling promotions. The problem with those weekly wrestling promotions a lot of times is they didn't last. Some guy would take over and he would use his day job money to pay for wrestling, and he could only do that for about a year or two. Then he'd lose too much money, and his wife would make him sell the company. And then another guy go, well, I can make money with it, and they do the same thing. And it was just this vicious cycle over and over. And then to compound it, we had problems with alcohol and drugs. We had problems with pedophilia. We had a lot of things going on in this area that I did not like. So when I made a little bit of my name with TCW, there's two ways I could have went. I could either kept trying to get booked and try to, go further and further and kind of ride that for as long as I could for how much I could, or I could come back here and try to clean up my area in professional wrestling. That's what I decided to do. So we decided to open our own company. And, the basic principle of it was, hey, we're a family-friendly organization. We don't cuss. We don't do anything vulgar. There's no extreme violence. Just great old-school professional wrestling. I would get so frustrated with the younger kids of today. They would sit there and go, wrestling's for everybody. You can do anything in wrestling. It doesn't matter. It's not real. You can be anything you want to be. The Statlander girl can be an alien from another planet, and that's her gimmick. It doesn't matter, that kind of thing. You can do whatever you want, was their thing. You can do whatever you want. And then I would go, okay, well, I want my wrestling based in reality, and I want it to be believable, with athleticism and as is taken as a sport. And they would go, oh, you can't do that. They don't believe that anymore. I said, you just said we could do anything. See, and that's where their argument falls off the rails. Your way doesn't hurt my way, but your way hurts my way, not the other way around.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the problem I always had with that. So like when we started the company, it was basically like there was basically like an 8-month period at one point where we didn't even have a super kick on the show. Now you tell me anywhere else in professional wrestling today that's going on.
Yeah.
We've never had a Canadian destroyer. You know what I mean? We've never had anything on the apron. Like we've never done any of those apron, pile drivers or anything like that. We've never done anything of that nature. The super kick thing, like that was just, we forgot to tell a kid one time that we didn't have any super kicks on the show usually. And we forgot to tell him, and one day he just went out there and threw one. And we're like, oh, we were all hot because we were like, oh, the streak is over. And then with the pile driver stuff, anytime we pile drive someone in our company, I mean, not just the end of the match, that person is like gone for months or years in some cases. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like we've built that mythology to our fans, and they believe it. They get with it. Like when I hooked a guy for the pile driver a couple months ago, they knew. They were like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's getting rid of them. You know what I mean? Like they were excited about it. You know what I mean? As to where if you watch now, people hook each other for Canadian destroyers, and they just kind of, They'll take a Canadian destroyer and flip up on their feet and take a super kick and take another destroyer. Then the other guy will reverse it, super kick him, and Canadian destroyer him, and then they're both down. And then we get a "This is awesome," and it's like you guys are insane.
Yeah, they don't. You're right. They don't sell like they did before. I mean, the abdominal stretch in the 70s. That was a move. That was a submission hold. I remember that. And now,
I won a match with the abdominal stretch just like 2 years ago. I've won with a headlock, abdominal stretch, headlock, a regular suplex. Yeah. I've done all that kind of stuff. People, the ones that said those things can't work anymore, I proved that they could.
Yeah, they can work. You just got to know how to sell it.
Yes.
You gotta like the atomic drop. Back in the day, the guy would get up, believable. Now you're exactly right. Guy get clothesline, he gets right back up instead of laying there, jiggling like they should be. And I'm glad to hear. I've watched a few of your shows. How about your television? Are you on television up there? Are you? What's your exposure like? I know social media, obviously, and things like that, but.
Yeah, we don't do any kind of television. We were doing some Twitch stuff at one point, but we kind of let that go by the wayside. We're happy, money coming through the door. People coming to the old school mentality and an ass every 18 inches. You know what I mean? That's kind of what we want our thing to be. Television, unfortunately, isn't television anymore. You know what I mean? Like television used to be this perfect relationship in professional wrestling because they needed content. And we needed the exposure to draw at the house shows. And we just kind of traded off. And somewhere along the way, one side got greedy. I don't know how that happened, but someone asked for money or this happened. And all of a sudden, now they want you to pay thousands and thousands of dollars a week to get on television because they would rather just sell it to an infomercial than give it to you, So for us, we're perfectly happy. Pro Wrestling Mid-South has turned a profit every year except 2020, obviously.
COVID,
when they shut us down for 5 months for no reason. So we've always turned a profit. We've always done what was best, and we just we've been in business, like I said, 8 years now. So
that's great.
And we're running 2 shows every Friday in Ripley, Tennessee, every Saturday night in Dyersburg, Tennessee. 6 years in Ripley, 8 years in Dyersburg. We were doing Mondays in Memphis last year. We did Mondays and Thursdays in Memphis at different points in time. And we're going to be adding a third town this year too. So,
wonderful.
Yeah. So, my goal was always to have a full-fledged territory where we were wrestling 5-6 nights a week. So that's still the goal.
Good for you. Let me ask you this. Do you work with any other promotions? Like, do you do inter-promotion?
There's some people, like I'm part of the AIWF.
Okay.
That guy, he wanted me to be a part of him for years, and I kind of him-hawed around it. But when I started thinking about it, I was like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, they seem to be doing something good. They're actually trying to be an alliance, unlike the NWA, which is just a one-man show at this point. So, like, why not be a part of them? There's other promotions that I'm friendly with, obviously, like Mid-States Wrestling. Jason Jones and them.
Yeah,
he's a really good friend of mine.
Yes, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and then like there's of course Dr. Tom has a training school and Ricky Morton has a training school and things like that. Yeah. I have working relationships with a lot of companies. I just don't like, especially in my immediate area. It doesn't benefit me to work with some of these other guys because they don't have the same set of standards that I do. Right. When it comes to their talent, unfortunately. So, or with the product that they're producing. So, I would much rather draw, and that was a big problem here too. Is guys would jump from federation to federation all the time, and no one knew who was where and what was what. But we've drawn a line in the sand of, hey, this is us and that's them. You know what I mean? So, at least maybe they'll know, hey, this is Pro Wrestling Mid-South. This is the family thing. This is that kind of thing versus all this other stuff.
Yeah. No, it sounds, I'm going to get up there sometime and go to one of your shows. I would really I've been to the mid-states. Jason Jones and I are pretty good friends. I've been to a lot of his shows. I go to Herb Simmons up in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, Herb's another friend of mine too.
Yeah, great promotion how they work up there. So I'm definitely gonna try to get up in your area, neck of the woods up there in West Tennessee, and see that. So one last question, and then I can let you go, sir. What some events coming up for us? Talk a little bit about some upcoming events for your promotion.
Like I said, right now we're doing every Friday night in Ripley, Tennessee, 207 South Washington. Bell time's 8:00. And then on Saturday nights, it's every Saturday night, Dyersburg, Tennessee, 1827 St. John at the Herb Welch WrestlePlex. We got a big event coming up February 11th, which is our annual one of our annual events. It's actually Breakups and Beatdowns 2K23, which will feature our current unified heavyweight champion, the Villain Rockwell from Oklahoma.
Ah, yes, the natural born villain.
The natural born villain. He's our unified champion right now. He snuck in.
Awesome.
He snuck in on the Battle Royal and eliminated me, and he won the title. So
well, darn him.
I know that he's a villain. That's what I'm saying. So he's the champ right now, and I actually just lost the #1 contenders match. So he'll be facing the Real Foot Saint, Brandon Ray, who Brandon Ray is 24 years old. He's 300 pounds. He's strong as an ox, and he's very agile. So it's gonna be an interesting contest for sure.
That sounds great, folks. Again, Mr. Greg Golden Boy Anthony, thank you for coming on. We're going to have your social media, your website in the description. Get you folks, if you're in that area, get out there and support Pro Wrestling Mid-South and other promotions. If you're in your area, you know, they put on a great product. They really do. And I don't just say that lightly. I mean that. And Greg, thanks again for coming on, sir. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. God bless.
All right. And folks, if you're watching, thank you. If you're listening, thank you. And if you haven't, please subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.